Well, good afternoon. I think there are one or two people who are still making their way after lunch, but it would be good to get started. The organisers have said to me, and I'm Nigel Chapman, by the way, the CEO of Plan International, that we can have an hour for this, so don't feel short-changed, because we started a little bit later than we expected. The subject of this plenary session is furthering child-friendly banking. That's the subject. In fact, really the subject of this whole conference, but that's the particular focus this afternoon. When Drew asked me to chair this session, she said, everybody will be very sleepy after lunch. Drew's never sleepy, by the way, but everybody else will be very sleepy after lunch. So would I make it exciting by asking the panel lots of awkward questions, which I don't think I need to do really, and wake everybody up. And I was thinking it's rather ironic, because normally when you put a group of bankers, commercial bankers, with regulators on the same platform, you don't have to wait for fireworks to happen. It has happened in the current environment in which we're living. But I think this will be a very civilized conversation. I hope so anyway, and also a well-informed one. And we have a very distinguished panel, which I'm going to introduce in a moment. I'd just like to frame the conversation by saying a few things as the boss of Plan International, which is one of the biggest child-centered development agencies in the world. We work in 50 countries. We reach something like 55 million children every year with our programs. And child-friendly banking, microfinance, working with young people is at the heart of our mission. So Drew said to me, well, could you put yourself almost in the mind of the future, if you like, and ask yourself, what would good child-friendly banking mean? What would it look like in 5 or 10 years' time? So I covered it really from the perspective of a rights-based organisation. Plan believes that we must promote children and young people's economic rights. It's one of the key strategies to tackle child poverty. We believe every child in Plan, not just, I'm sure it will be shared by many INGOs, and many people in this room, I suspect, want to see all children realise their full potential in their futures. And in the past, I think we've concentrated heavily upon health, education, water, protection, increasingly on participation. But in recent years in Plan, we recognise that in order to enable children to fulfil their potential, we also need to consider economic development too. And specifically how far children and young people can contribute to civil society as they grow up, become responsible citizens, get jobs, become economically literate and economically able to earn a living. They can contribute an awful lot to society. And we see at the moment, as we look around the world, many, many examples where that's not happening. And it's a serious source of concern, I think, to all of us. That lost opportunity, and the fact that those young people are maybe not able to realise their full potential. And it's also a source of civil unrest in many places too. So governments, may I suggest, also need to be thinking very hard about what they need to do about it. Plan has promoted microfinance for adults, mainly young women and poor women, for many years. We've worked with Alpha Tune, of course, for some 12 years and more in 12 countries, and with other partners to add financial education for children to the curriculum, and to create opportunities too for them to build up savings through youth groups, women's groups, at village and community level. But I think we all recognise that to take this up to a different step, different level together, we need to engage with financial institutions, we need to engage with regulators, we need to engage with the whole financial community to make this a higher priority and to get child-friendly banking much higher up the agenda than it is in many societies at the moment. So, at the risk of being a bit provocative, if I was to try and frame this conversation, I'd say maybe child-friendly banking should be about a number of things. First of all, it should be that all children and youth, including the poorest children wherever they live, including the most marginalised children who live often in remote and difficult areas of access, would get a chance to engage in banking with the appropriate products and the appropriate services. The second point I would make is that those services need to be shaped by the consumers. And consumers are children and young people. And too often the voices of children and consumers are not heard. They were heard this morning, I'm glad to say, but I think if we go around the world, they're often not heard enough, not just in relation to this subject, but in relation to so many issues that they face. The third area where the financial institutions ensure that children and youth are aware of their economic rights, including the financial education, and they understand those rights. Not just aware of it, they understand them. And I think there's going to be a great, perhaps move forward to put economic rights in the same basket as participation or protection or development or survival in the years ahead. It's not formally there, but I think we should be advocating strongly that it is, because I think it's a fundamental right of young people. We want children to be able to access a savings account easily, to hold a passbook in their own name, not in their parents' name, and that they're also protected and safe from exploitation, because often these are commercial products, there is a risk of exploitation, and they're not charged for this service. And finally, regulators would push child-friendly banking through incentives and rewards. There should be some reward for those who take the risk in this area. And finally, I'll finish with a personal story. I was trying to remember when I first had economic freedom myself. And it was at the age of 10, and my mother gave me 2 pence, which was about 3 cents, in euro terms, as well in Amsterdam, to go on a bus home from school. And I had a choice at that time whether to spend my 3 pence on sweets at the local shop or catch the bus. Most of the time I spent it on sweets, because my teeth aren't very good. But the serious point about that was the first time I actually had a choice about what I was going to do without my 3 pence. And eventually I had some pocket money, and that was 6 pence. And I could choose whether to save it or whether to spend it. And for the first time as a child, I felt that I was no longer entirely kind of under the control of my parents in relation to my own finances. That's a little microscopic story. But actually, it captures the sort of freedoms, if you like, the sort of opportunities, the sort of chances that we'd like children to have all around the world. Often in, frankly, far more difficult circumstances than I was born. So that's by way of the context, if you like, of what child-friendly banking might look like, and how much sweets might be eaten if children had it. And I'm going to ask our panelists now to make their statements. I've said to them, can we just have 5 minutes maximum? So we'd like a lot of time from the audience. So there'll be roving mics going around later on to pick up questions, and we'll come to that part in about, I suggest, about 25 minutes. So we've got a very distinguished panel. 1 or 2 panelists didn't make it, just for explanation. Our colleagues from the DRC Congo and from the Equity Bank in Kenya didn't make it because of visa problems. So it means the others have more time than they would otherwise have, but I hope they don't take too much of it. And so we're going to start off with Mr. Dertiano from Group ACP, chairman of Group ACP. He's also actually on the board of Child and Youth Finance International. And just by way of introduction, he's a very distinguished guy, and this organisation that he is involved with was founded 43 years ago. That's true, 43 years ago. And on his website last night, it was a house and a few people. He set it up. It was an idea to provide banking services to low-income households and also to people who want to set up small businesses. And it set off on that journey, and it's now set up on its journey in Peru, and it's now a business that is doing similar things, microfinance, microinsurance, microcredit, all sorts of different things, in some 10 countries in Latin America. It's an amazing story about how one idea became a really big idea. So without further ado.